welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and for those of you joining us tonight, when this airs, and I say when this airs, because we are pre-recording this because our guest, who is amazing, lives in the UK and time zones do not permit her to be on at the regular time because I will not make her get up in the wee hours of the morning. So I am so grateful that we're able to pre-record this for everyone. And so without further ado, I present to everyone the one, the amazing Dollie Indigostar.
Hey, hello, Michael. Thank you for inviting me. We've had it planned for some time, and we've finally met.
We have, and I gotta say, the universe works in great ways, and so I think with the topic we're going to be talking about, I think it's perfect that it landed where it landed.
Absolutely. So I absolutely do not know what we are going to be talking about tonight, Michael. You fill me in.
Well, that's the funness of live shows. Do we ever really know what we're talking about?
Do we? I don't know.
But so before I start us off with a couple of topic ideas, could you give the guests a little bit of background about who you are and what you are, or not what you are, because you are a star being, but a little bit of your background?
Oh, well, I guess I've just been able to share my world and search for others. That's how I started. Everything that I did was I just wanted to find some others like me and find a few answers. And then we got this incredible highway and access to this thing that we called the internet, and our worlds went kaboom. And my world went kaboom, and I started to connect with people and do a lot of research and work with some amazing people all over the planet that are good, credible guys. I've worked with some of the top out there, and I've just found the rabbit hole gets deeper and deeper, Michael. So everything that I experienced from my earlier age of being able to work out why I had these ET and extraterrestrial visitations that I now know as that's perhaps what they were. But at the time when I was a child, it was a lot for me to work out. And through my very early adult years, I had a family and raised a family, but still continued my research and never really let go of the things that I was experiencing, because I needed to find out, who are these beings? Where am I from? How does this connect to the world that I live in? I need some answers. I need to find some facts. So I'm just like any other mom out there, that just goes on a quest and takes it a little bit further, let's say. And I started to put boots on the ground, and I visited some of these places across the globe that I found incredible things out about. And my research has took me to meet some incredible people and find out some secrets of our humanity and quest, and our spiritual quest that we have here, our life's journey. So it's always interesting. I've got new things coming up all the while. Somebody is always contacting me with something to figure out, whether it be from Mars to aliens to ghosts or just being spiritual and in tune. I kind of cover it all. I let it all out the box. It's all out there. I want to know everything. And that's how I got into sharing what I know because I couldn't contain it. I had to share it.
That's beautiful, and I'm glad you are sharing it. And as you mentioned, talking about secrets, one of the secrets that I was looking forward to talking with you about is someone from the ancient times who I feel like, one, doesn't get the recognition that's deserved, and two, the recognition that she has is not accurate. And so I'm curious to pick your mind about a certain woman, and I'm sure you figured it out, talking about Lilith.
I thought you was going to bring that up. How did I know? It's on everybody's lips, and in my eyes, she's almost just as famous as the mysterious Inanna. And I think there we have the answer all in one, because most of these deities and gods and goddesses, they had two sides, just like we have a choice, and good, bad, evil, dark, light, and they had exactly the same. And they were a warlike race. They were very territorial. They were very manipulative as well, and sometimes quite evil and brutal, as we know from some of the stories and some of the facts throughout history of areas of the planet where they've had huge battles with different clans. It's still going on today. We're still fighting for those lands. They're still being fought over today, as we know. So it runs deep. It runs deep. And we're talking Anunnaki levels. We're talking gods and goddesses. So my guess is that Ereshkigal was the other side of Inanna, her darker side. And when we go into the stories in the tales and poems of Inanna and the Epic of Gilgamesh, and really look deep into it and start to pick it apart with a fresh eye, if you like, with a modern eye, we can see a distraught woman that had lost her partner, that went deep into the inner caves of the earth to seek solitude with her own darkness. So she kind of had a death, if you like, lived a death and went to the underworld to seek solace and justice from the gods within the earth. Now there we have a few more conflicting Anunnaki tales of we have tales of the inner earth gods, that there's gods that live within the earth, that these creatures went within the earth. We've got the underworld gods. Are they one and the same? Is there a race of these beings that are part of this planet that she went and consulted? Because we're talking thousands and thousands of generations back.
Right. And one of the things that I find interesting is she was, according to biblical and Sumerian texts, the first wife of Adam. And both Adam and Lilith just appear. They're just here. Then all of a sudden they go, well, God took a rib out of Adam and Eve was created, and Lilith just disappears.
She disappears. Yeah.
What was the big threat about Lilith that they had to create another persona? Do you feel?
If we think about an ancient description of something that you need to fear or keep away from or not give in to, And one of the biggest things is temptation. And then we're going into the talks of sex and sexuality. We're talking about, when we talk about Adam and Eve and them in the Garden of Eden, we're talking two adolescent teenagers that have become aware of their sexual desires and decided to mate. They've done naturally what they did. Eve was punished for that in the biblical texts. So was it that she was punished and turned into Lilith, as in temptation? And the snake, we have the famous snake, which is the DNA, which is wrapped around Lilith, but she's always very beautiful. And the depiction of Eve is that she's the daughter of Eden, the daughter of God, and she would have been beautiful, desirable to the eye. But then we also go a little bit further when Eve, through that temptation and knowing and understanding of her sexual self, she gave birth to the two twins, the brothers, the famous brothers that were Cain and Abel. But then we have conflicting stories that go on a little bit further, because then the two brothers, they took wives from neighboring clans. It's there in the Bible for us to read. We just need to begin to unravel it and ask questions. So that therefore tells us that Adam and Eve were not just the first, male and female, because their sons and offspring took wives from neighboring clans. So it tells us that parts of Earth were already separated up and governed. And then we have the epic tales of the Anunnaki itself through the stories of Enki and his brother Enlil. And it's written all over Samaria and Mesopotamia and modern nowadays Iraq and Iran, Persia. It's part of their history, culture. It's there for us to see. Most of it's in the museums as well.
Right.
And a lot of it's been destroyed.
I was going to ask you about if Adam and Eve and Lilith and their children were Anunnakis, because that would explain then why there were women for the sons to marry. Because, yeah, the Bible just says Adam and Eve, then says Cain and Abel got married. It's like, wait, where did it? Doesn't, like, it's but like, oh, suddenly there's like more people.
Make sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to you. So if we go back a little bit further, let's go back just a little bit further. We've got two children, basically, that are brought up in a garden. That's a little bit hard for me to believe. I couldn't leave my 9-year-old in a garden to look after himself.
Right, especially with all the animals around.
Yeah, he would need some kind of education. He would need some kind of guidance, which tells me that Adam and Eve had some kind of guardians that watched over them. And Adam and Eve must have also, they didn't just spring out of thin air, because if that kind of happened, and we're going into stories of God taking a rib from Adam to create Eve, then we're kind of talking genetic modification in modern day terms, basically.
Right.
So we're then talking about, is this an advanced race of a civilization that apparently we are in their image of, and they helped assist create us? Because this is what seems to be that the stories are coming forward. The most famous book on the planet, the Holy Bible. There's other books out there, the Quran and all those. When we look at all these biblical and religious texts, they've lasted a long time to apparently assist us and guide us into some kind of answers as to where we came from and where we were created from. And it tells you there in black and white in the first sentences. And it's quite simple to work out from the beginning, because we haven't changed much since we were created. We've just evolved mentally, spiritually, and physically. But our actual physical design, as in the arms and the legs and the head and how everything functions correctly for us to follow orders and be instructed, hasn't changed from when we were created. The first part of the Bible tells you God created man in his own image. So therefore, if I were to meet God, he would be a being that looks just like me or you.
Right. And I've been sitting here thinking, as we're talking about, the stories and looking at them in a different light. And you pointed out saying, did Lilith become Eve or vice versa? And I was thinking, going, when they plucked the rib of Adam and genetically modified, and could they have modified Lilith, in which case she then became Eve? And it was through the modification she took on a new persona, new everything, because she was transplanted through genetic modification. So that's what they're saying. Yeah, when
it could be there a very strong possibility, because as we know, there were not just Adam and Eve that were created. I think when you read through some of the ancient texts and scriptures and things that have been recorded, and not just by Zachariah Stitchley, may I say, out there, other scholars that have looked at this stuff, and they're telling a story of how the human race was created and for what purpose. And I think it's kind of got lost along 2,000 years of trying to revert us and to forget our history and give us amnesia. So we've not been told the truth for a very long time, going back generational. And to change a whole generation takes thousands of years. And so to be back now where we are, where they were in genetic modification, we can do that, what they did back then. We can create, we've heard the famous Dolly the sheep, but we've got, yes, we can. There's tales out there, certain conspiracies where they say that they did experiment and there were certain twins and certain children that were born, and there's all kinds of tales out there to genetic modification.
Right. And I think one of the biggest and, to me, interesting cover-ups that they've done is to take, like you're saying, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and we think, oh, Enki, Enlil. Everybody will say, yeah, those are Sumerian gods. They've taken away their identity as being Anunnaki.
Yes.
And so I've been hearing recently, and I'm curious of your thoughts about this, is we know Enki and Enlil were brothers. But I've been starting to hear that there was a third brother now who has been taken out of the story, and they're starting to figure out yeah, there actually was a third brother and what his role was.
Are we talking about Alalu?
We could be.
We could be talking about Alalu, because this is where the story starts, and it was Alalu, which was the first one to find the Huey Blue planet, as he called it. He was the one that made the escape for freedom from Nibiru, and the home planet of the collective of the Anunnaki, which is a collective of multi races. We know that now. There's multi races involved. And he was the one that actually made it here first in his escape, and it was all over authority and ownership over the throne, because he came forward and claimed himself as well. He was a son of this man as well, so it was all a bit hierarchical, who got the throne.
Okay.
So they kind of he was kind of removed, and they say that he was sent with his pilot to live in exile on Mars. And this is where we have the face on Mars. I think it was the sister of Enki, now known as Nina Sag, that she piloted when she came past, and she discovered his pilot was still alive, but he was dead, and built a shrine to him. And could that be the face on Mars? Could that actually be a tomb that is dedicated? In the scriptures, it says that was built, and he would forever be pointing back at Earth, looking where he first landed, because he gave a call out. Have you read The Lost Book of Enki?
Actually, I have not. Honestly,
It's an interesting tale, and the Epic of Gilgamesh. I've read so many books, but I just go back to them a lot and read them over and over.
I've read the Epic of Gilgamesh. And the one thing that I always find interesting with it is with Enki and Enlil, the debate over which one is the good versus the bad or angry brother, who is one was trying to help mankind and the other was trying to enslave. And so I can see in reading, if you just read the epic, you can't really define which one was which, but
that's the thing. Humans, we love a good tale, and we love a good battle of good and evil and who wins. But they don't tell you the end of the story, that they were brothers, and brothers are united. And that's exactly what happened. They came back together. They united back together. And the domains were ruled by these guys. We've got the famous Enki, known as the god of the waters, land and water. And then we have Enlil, the air god. So he was of all the air command and flight and spaceports. So these guys had their domains, but they would have had conflict all the way. They had Anunnaki troops that were here in their thousands. Literal thousands.
So I'm curious if when we look at the gods, through mythologies, I notice the similarities between the Romans and the Greeks, and they often say they stole from each other. So, you kind of can explain that. But then you look at the Egyptians, the Sumerians, all of that area. And the one thing I find interesting is the gods live somewhere else and come down to visit. Whereas when you get to like the Norse, the gods are among them. They're like humans living in there. So I'm wondering if we look at it from the stance of like if the gods were Anunnaki gods, just their names changed, their race changed. Does the Norse still qualify as Anunnaki, or
they're all Anunnaki. We are offspring of the Anunnaki, and we are a creation of them. So all within the different races and parts of humanity, they are somehow connected to the Anunnaki star races. The word Anunnaki gets kind of confused a little bit. A lot of people think when they hear the word Anunnaki, they think some terrible 7-foot reptilian alien with jaws and swords and magic powers and lasers and things. I don't know what they think when they hear the word Anunnaki and they hear, oh, they're evil, they're bad, they're this. When we find out what Anunnaki means and the word and split it up, the word Anunnaki, it was the name of the god of Nibiru. Anu is the main god of the planet Nibiru. And we have Na and Ki of earth, those from heaven who came to earth. So we're talking about not one individual specific race. The wording is those that came from the heavens to the earth. So there's not just one race.
right?
We're a multicultural planet today, and we have to remember the star races are from all over. It is multicultural. They work together. So whether they be Arcturians, Pleiadians, Andromedans, Zetas, the good guys, Syrians, they're known as Anunnaki. They came, they interacted, they passed knowledge, they worked together. The bloodlines of Enlil and Enki that both had different mothers, the same father but different mothers. The different mothers were from different star races. So this is, and the other brother was from different star races. These, beings were multicultural.
And what I find interesting is when looking at it that way, like, Anunnaki, as you described it, being of Nibiru, it reminds me of when we had 9 full planets, and then they say, oh, there's a 10th planet, Nibiru, coming in, and that became such a threat that Pluto got knocked off the list, so we wouldn't have 10. And I'm like, why is Nibiru such a threat? And then, hearing you explain what Anunnaki means, it's like, I get it now. Mm-hmm. I get why they would be afraid of Nibiru's arrival, because it means the end times for those who are misusing the Anunnaki name. It's like they're going to be coming back to say, wait a minute, we're setting the record straight.
Exactly.
No more.
And they did promise their return. They've been telling humanity from the beginning, we will return. At the end times, we're going to return. And if we go to modern day times now, and in the awakening period that we've had over the last 20 to 30 years especially, we've been all flowing with this message of, is there a return of something? Is there something? Are we going to leap that step further? Are we going to discover something? There's more and more evidence and facts coming forwards to support UAP sightings and some strange phenomenon and activity that does occur on the planet. And it's coming to light now as being recognized in
So I'm curious if, like, with the situation in Egypt with the Egyptian gods, where there's multi gods, then there's one god, back to the multi gods. How, if the gods were the Anunnaki, how did they go and make themselves one, and then go, okay, nope, we're going back to many?
Okay. The problem is that we have so many conflicting stories that are global. But all these stories surround themselves around 7 main gods all over the planet, within every single culture, all over the planet. And so the Egyptian gods and deities are those Anunnaki. We've got Ra, the sun god. He was known as Marduk. We know that now. The son of Enki. He was a son of Enki. Thoth, we know as his name as being Ninshizada. In Sumerian translations and Akkadian and Babylonian texts, we're talking about the same individuals, but with different names and meanings and representations. Just like the goddess Isis, who we say was Ishtar, and Ishtar we know as Inanna was also known as Ishtar. So we have the same goddess, Inanna, and she is Anunnaki, a descendant. Anu's granddaughter, he gave her Uruk, which is modern day Ziggurat that we now know. So, yeah. I've gone blank for a minute, Michael. You'll have to edit me for a minute. So we've got a lot of, and it does make you go blank because you hit blank walls everywhere. You've got all these gods and goddesses, but there are 7 of them, but they are basically translated and depicted in whichever historical battle, whichever change of ownership or rulership. They would have carved these on the walls. They would have wanted them to last throughout history. There's lots of myths and theories about how the pyramids were built and such monuments like that. Was that an Anunnaki structure? Was it once a huge base, Anunnaki base in Egypt? Some say it was a conduit, a portal to the stars. And that's kind of the story you get when you are there and you walk through Egypt and see the tombs and focus on the message of the meaning of our life here, and also our afterlife is so important as well. Right. They left it for us on the walls.
And I can attest that when I was in Egypt and going to the 7 temples that were aligned to the chakras, it's aligned to different, trying to think, energies, depending on where you're at. I did notice that feeling in the people I was with, where we were all talking about how walking through the sands there, walking through the temples,
yes,
you had the feeling of, I am walking in the same place they did thousands of years ago. It has been literally untouched.
It's not changed. It has not changed, apart from it is a little bit run down and decaying a little bit. But there is more and more coming from underneath the sands of Egypt. It's so exciting right now out there because there is so much being discovered and uncovered that's coming to light out there. The LiDAR maps that they've recently done, they found huge underground cities, but they haven't got the hands and means to excavate them yet. So who knows what secrets are yet to be revealed that's preserved under there.
Right. And hopefully the right people will be, excavating them, because Egypt is just as bad as the U.S. with the Smithsonian of when you uncover something that goes against the mainstream narrative, they quickly come in, take over the site, and try to control the narrative. And so no one ever really knows what was found. And as we're talking about this, it kind of makes sense to me. When I went to Rome and was walking in the Pantheon, I was hurt and angry that all the statues of the gods were gone and replaced with saints and angels. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the saints and angels look nice and all, but I never understood why they had to remove the images of the gods. And as we're talking about, if the seven gods, as we were saying, are the same.
They did it in Egypt as well. It's all over Egypt, though, isn't it? I mean, if you walk through Luxor and places like that and the temples there, most of the statues have been defaced.
Right. And I'm wondering now if they've done that so we didn't say, wait a minute, why does Ramses' statue here look like this guy over in the Pantheon? And why, did these look like the ones in Mesoamerica, South America? Because there's no statues there. And I have a feeling it's because they were removed. And it's really got me wondering now, is it more because their faces would be too identical?
It could be. Could they look too Phoenician, or could they look too Egyptian, or could they look too extraterrestrial?
Right. And Nefertiti, I mean, her and I don't know if they went as far as say her son Tutankhamun the same, but Nefertiti was well known as having the elongated skull, having it bound and made. And who are the only people we know that have that? The ETs.
Yes.
And so it begs the question, one, why would a queen make herself to look like an ET? Or two, why is there only one that they talk about and say, oh, this one had an elongated skull and the rest didn't? It makes you wonder now, did they, when they were excavating, switch out the skulls to say, nope, this is a human pharaoh versus
they could have done.
alien?
I mean, they would. The last thing they would want to do is start to change history, huh?
Yeah, and it brings to mind too the famous crystal skulls that are around. That I believe, isn't there 7 crystal skulls?
I think there is 9. Is there 9?
Is there 9?
I'm not sure, because there's a lot of conflicting of who actually knows how many they are.
Right, but even 7 to 9, it's interesting. It's the same number as the Anunnaki main gods. And so, is it one? Could it be their skull that's going around? Because I've seen a crystal skull and sat with it, and it does open up your mind and give you visions of stuff. That was my experience. And so it's like, either their keys to knowledge or it could be their skulls and we just don't realize it. But it also could explain if it was Anunnaki technology, the star races that made it, why there's no chisel marks in it. Because you look at their architecture they left behind, it's more precise than anything we have.
Absolutely laser cut. Absolutely. If you look at the crystal skulls and think about it, the crystal is a conduit and it holds memory. Perhaps there's some kind of memories that are held in there.
Right, and that's what makes me think, was this, when they say they're coming back and keys of knowledge will be revealed. Well, what's happening now that Nibiru is supposedly coming close to our galaxy again? The crystal skulls are becoming more famous and becoming more talked about. Going place to place and people having experiences with it. So
I don't think they've discovered them all yet, though, have they? Because that's the final thing, isn't it? When they all come back together, it's said that when they're all back together, that's when something will come to light about them. I suppose they all have to be reunited, and they're scattered, and there is conflicting of, are they man-made?
If they are man-made, I would like to know who made them, because that is beyond any work I've ever seen, that there is not a single chisel mark, glue mark, or anything. They are absolute perfect.
Precise, yeah. Yes. I think Drunvalo Melchizedek, he did some work with the crystal skulls.
I think he did, and I think he was one of them. And I wonder.
He brought something back together. It was mentioned in his book, The Kundalini Rising, was it?
I think it was.
Don't quote me on that, because there's a couple of books. It wouldn't have been in The Flower of Life. I think it was in the Kundalini Rising where he mentions about the crystal skulls and he was reunited or something with them.
And, I find it interesting because when we look at the Anunnaki and the understanding now of being multi, race, then when they're here, where is the division? Why the division of, do they not want us to realize, hey, Lyrian could be classified as Anunnaki? Why all of a suddenly do they want us afraid of the term Anunnaki, do you think?
I think we fear what we don't understand. And they are such a complex race that are from the star races. We do not understand the star races and their councils and however they structure and function. We know there's a higher hand at work on this planet. And whichever way we look into it, look around it, we know that there's royal bloodlines still on the planet, that there are that they are still here. The Anunnaki are still very, very much part of Earth. We are part of them.
So do you feel like the Nephilim are Anunnaki as well, or are they hybrids?
Well, you've got the beginning of the races when the Ijiji, the younger Anunnaki, took the first women from the clans and created the giants. So then this is when God himself apparently took a hand in what was going on the earth and made sure that this was not going on this planet. And then we get into the tales of the angels and the archangels and those that sit by the throne of God, and it kind of all does correlate. We've got the Archangel Michael, the most beautiful angel of all.
Right, and he's supposed to be the protector of the planet.
Yes. These angelics were given positions. So they are Anunnaki. They are all Anunnaki descendants. Those with wings, that we depicted them with wings. So we kind of turned them into our archangels and angels and angelic beings, which is the best way that we could describe these heavenly visitors descending from the sky, giving us orders and instructions and structure.
So then I wonder if we're look at it that way, then what the significance is of like the seraphim with having the red wings, the powers that don't have wings, and the archangels, angels, guardian angels, you know, the different levels, the warrior angels.
They've all got wings, they all fly. It doesn't mean they physically fly like a bird, but those have been seen. So I can't quite, conflict it, because people have said that they have had angelic presences. And I know myself firsthand people that wouldn't tell me lies, that have said that they've seen beings, but then describe this being as having some kind of wings on its back where it could move quickly. But they've got the power of flight and portals, and when we go into inner earth tales, and lots of tales that have been shared about the inner earth, and we talk about inner earth races, I think those were discussed as that there was some kind of angelic beings that were perhaps inside the earth as well. Beings were seen to have flown out of the earth and into the earth. And when we look at tales of Satan as well, didn't he kind of fly in and out the earth? Or does he just materialize? Or how does he get there? How do all these gods get there? Do they materialize? We're talking magic then, if so. These guys are magic, yeah?
Right. And one of the things I find interesting, thinking now is, we're all taught, and it's been reinforced and become unquestionable that hell is beneath us or inside the planet somewhere. And I can't help thinking, was that their way of, they knew inner earth was going to get revealed at some point, and so their idea of going, let's not get people wanting to go to inner earth, so how do we cover that up? Hey, let's make it hell.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's actually the reverse, like we're living in the hell here because of all the wars and strife. Because everything I hear about inner earth is there is nothing but peace, love, and technology is booming. We're here, we're being suppressed.
Yes. And I've heard the same things from lots of different cultures within different things. I've even heard it about Mars. that there is ancient civilization that is still on Mars, that is underground, and our governments know about it, and they have been working with them for years. And I've known about this for many years and have interviewed a few credible people that have stated that they've worked there, they've done something along the lines of visiting these places.
I'm curious your viewpoint of, I know a lot of people are coming up and saying, you know, Hollywood has been taken over, but there are some elements that are still disclosing stuff. And I remember the movie John Carter being about Mars and talking about how they're able to go from Earth to Mars through that device, and that there was two cultures there, main cultures. One that was, like we would say, you know, the dualistic viewpoint of Earth. So I don't know if necessarily that was true, that there were those two factions like that, but it made it so that Earth people could understand it, because we live in a dualistic society. But I'm curious your viewpoint of, do you feel like the technology and the way they travel, was that more realistic, you think, and more real than not real? Or do you think it was just a great story that just kind of got people started to think, hey, you know, could there be life on Mars?
See, I'm going to reveal my age now. I'm like 48. So I can remember like reading things in papers and things over the years, and looking at storybooks and like National Geographics and stuff like that, and stuff that you pick up and stuff that you read. And I was fascinated with the things that they were saying about Mars right back in the 80s. I'm talking when I was a kid. They was talking about colonizing Mars when I was like 10. That's
Right.
like 38 years ago.
Same for me, yeah.
Yeah, same as you. So when we actually look at when did they stop going to the moon, when did they stop all these missions, when did all this stop, and where did all this funding keep going? And we know now that we've got that extra part of the military that's the secret space, the American force. You guys have got it. You've got your Space Force guarding the planet and doing all kinds of missions, which tells us that they have spacecraft, they have spaceships, space vehicles. We're now in that age, and of course, it is secret. It's secret space. We're not going to reveal all our secrets to the whole world about how we're guarding and looking after and protecting the planet. You know, so everything becomes secret, but then everything becomes sordid and shaded and covered up, and then we go into black budget projects, and where did the money go? But I've spoken to a few people, and the technology has changed with Mars. The craft has changed. The time that it takes to get there has changed, considered to when people were talking about when they were going there in the 80s. Personnel that were going there, they were saying it was taking them like 45 minutes to get there. Now it can take like an instant and you can be there. Now this sounds too far-fetched and too scientific, but there is whistleblowers out there that have come forward and stated and said these things, and unfortunately these whistleblowers don't get heard, or their work gets lost, or something gets hidden, or
They get mocked
gets
and
covered up.
Yeah.
It gets covered up, and Yeah. So I would say the technology and the ability that they have now compared to back then when they were first kind of talking about it. And isn't that one of Elon Musk's things at the moment, that he wants to get there to Mars?
Right.
The huge fascination with unfortunately most of these elite guys on the planet, the race is on. They want to get there to Mars. They want to be the first. They want to get there. Somebody wants to get there first and put their men there first.
Right. And I personally have the opinion of
Your
it's
sound,
gonna be,
your sound's
it's
gone all crackly.
can you hear me? Can you understand me
Yes,
now?
yes.
Okay. I was say the interesting thing is, like you're saying, them racing to get to Mars. When they land to go on the first and having people with boots on the ground already coming out and going, "Hey, welcome to Mars," and being like, "Oh crap, we're already here. I've spent all this money to get here, and we're already here." So I think that would be comical to watch.
It would be. But I'm sure NASA already know about it. I've worked with some of the greatest anomalists in and even guys that were employed by NASA itself that have images that are archived and not even out there, and that there's clearly some kind of structural evidence remnants left on Mars that just does not make sense.
Right. And amazingly, Dolly, as much fun as it is, we actually are at the end of the hour.
I know.
So we'll have to get you back on, and we'll have
Okay,
to,
you'll have to.
yeah, because I feel like there's so much more. And where can people find you?
You can find me. I've got a YouTube channel, SpaceLink TV. You can find me and my interviews and work over there. And I also work with basistv.com. So we've got a lot of stuff out there. I work there.
Oh, we'll see if we can get her back on. This is part of the fun of having guests from the UK on, is sometimes internet cuts out, and so signals get interfered with. So I am going to take this opportunity to thank Dolly for coming on, and we will have her back on again. And thank you all for watching this episode. And we will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Riding Through the Unknown. So have a great night, everyone. Have a blessed day wherever you are in the world. Take some time for yourself and take care of yourself. Love yourself. Have a great one, everyone. Bye bye.